Most people don't survive their spiritual awakening, not because it ends their life, but because it ends the life they knew. It brings up something raw, something real, something untamed and alive, and the identity they've carefully built for years. It shatters. So, they retreat. They numb themselves. They go back to the dream world, because real truth doesn't save you. Gently it breaks you open first. It breaks every illusion you worship, every story you clung to, every mask you wore for so long it became your skin. This is the part nobody talks about, the hidden side of awakening, the one they leave out of every romantic version of enlightenment, the screaming silence, the collapse of everything familiar, the soulquake that shakes you until nothing makes sense anymore. They told you awakening would be light, but that's only one side of the coin. The other half lives in the shadows, and once you see behind the veil, the world doesn't fall apart. Physically it dissolves. Everything you thought had meaning begins to fade. Your identity collapses. Your beliefs fall apart. Even your goals and gods feel empty. What used to give you purpose now feels like echoes in a space you can call home. And this is what Jung meant when he said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Awakening doesn't come wearing comfort, it arrives dressed as crises. It starts when your life feels hollow. Not because it's evil, but because it was designed to keep you safe, not whole. The scaffolding you once depended on now feels like a prison, but now something deeper inside you is ready. Something sacred, ancient, and wild. Something that refuses to go back to sleep. Your old desires now feel strange. Your relationships feel distant. The pleasures you once chased now feel empty. And then there's silence. Not peaceful silence, but one so loud it drowns out the voice you used to call me. This is ego death, not a metaphor, a full psychological death of who you believed you were. And if you fight it, it hurts more. But if you surrender, it still tears you apart. Yet in that tearing you catch a glimpse of something eternal. This is why most don't survive it. The old self fights back. It clings. It bargains. It tries to convince you this isn't real, that you're just lost, depressed, broken. And maybe you are, but not in the way you think. You're only lost because the map they gave you never led to your soul. You were taught how to succeed, but not how to feel. How to conform, but not how to descend inward and face what's real. So when the descent begins, it feels like destruction. But in truth it's a sacred invitation, a spiritual initiation. You're not dying, you're becoming. But to become, you must let go of everything that isn't you. You'll lose things, people, labels, versions of yourself you thought were forever. And you must let them fall, because if you try to drag them into your new life, they'll rot in your hands. Awakening doesn't give you a better life, burns the old one down, and then it waits, in the ashes, to see what dares to rise. That's why most people run back. They choose comfort over truth, applause over authenticity, the known prison over the unknown wilderness, because the wilderness, it's terrifying. It speaks a language logic can't understand. It asks you to stay present, to feel, to face the reflection of your shadow self, not as an enemy but as a missing part of your being, the one who raged, who feared, who didn't get love, and learned to survive without it. Now that part is asking to come home, and to awaken fully you have to let it. You must sit with your shadow and meet it with compassion. That's not easy. The shadow doesn't speak softly. It shows up as triggers, defensiveness, jealousy, addiction. It sabotages your growth until you face it, until you turn toward it instead of away. Most people never do. They think awakening ends pain. But really, it's the start of facing it, not spiritually bypassing it, but sitting in it. And that's what makes it so hard. Awakening doesn't ask for half of you. It asks for all of you. It wants your grief, your rage, your silence. It asks you to die while still breathing, to lose your mind so you can meet your soul, to watch everything fall and still say yes. Because surrender not strength is what carries you through. The ego was built on control. Control of how you look, how you're seen, what you feel. But the soul, it was born to become. And becoming takes unmaking. You have to peel back the armor, the stories, the roles that kept you small. What remains isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It waits. It whispers beneath the noise. Not with words but with an ache. A deep, honest ache for something real. Not more money, not more success, just more truth. That ache isn't a mistake. It's not depression. It's the call. a sacred inner knowing that you're ready to leave the lie behind. But most people hear it and pretend it's nothing. They silence it with distractions or drown it in performance, because answering the call means losing what was never truly yours, and that hurts. The beginning of awakening feels like exile. Exile from the familiar, from the persona, from the systems that once made you feel safe. And in that exile, you'll crave your old life. You'll miss the numbness, the routine, the pretending, but you can't go back. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you feel your soul, you can't forget. So you wander through sleepless nights, through tears that have no clear cause, through relationships that now feel hollow. This is the space between selves, the void, the sacred unknown. This is where your soul does its real work, where your unhealed wounds rise like smoke from a fire. Your old pain shows up, demanding attention, and for the first time, instead of running, you stay. You don't numb, you don't escape, you feel, you listen, you let it speak, and it tells you something powerful. The pain was never your enemy. It was a doorway. The sadness, the rage, the fear, they weren't broken pieces. They were messages from parts of you that waited to be heard. And as you listen, you soften. You begin to love yourself in ways you never imagined. You find compassion for the child who was never held, for the teen who had to be tough, for the adult who confused performance with purpose. You see it all now, with kindness, with grace, and in that grace, something changes. You stop needing to be perfect. You stop needing to fix yourself. You stop chasing healing like a trophy. Instead, you start being honest. Honest about the mess, about the magic, about the paradox of being human. And that honesty becomes your new foundation. Not certainty, not control, just truth. You no longer need people to understand you. You stop begging to belong. You stop trading your soul for approval. Because now, you belong to yourself. Not because you figured it all out, but because you finally stopped running. And that changes everything. That's the part most people never reach. Not because they're weak, but because they were never shown how to stay. To stay in discomfort, to stay in silence, to stay with their soul long enough for it to speak. But you did. You stayed. And because of that, you become something real. Not polished, not perfect, but whole and alive. And from that place, you stop chasing meaning. You start being it. You walk through the world, not trying to impress, just trying to stay true. And even in the hard moments, even when it hurts, you don't run, because you know now, what hurts is also what heals. And that is why you survived your awakening. Not because you mastered it, not because you transcended it, but because you stayed. And in staying, you found yourself not the version they told you to be, but the one you actually are. So if you're still here, still breathing through the fire, still walking through the unknown, still holding your truth when the world asks you to let it go, then I want you to know something. You're not alone. You're not broken. You're becoming. This journey isn't easy, but it's real, and real is worth everything. If this message spoke to something deep within you, if it reminded you of your own soul's voice, then let this be your sign to keep going. And if you'd like to walk this path with others who are waking up, to hit that subscribe button and join us here on Trance, where we don't just talk about awakening, we live it. Your truth is welcome here. Your story matters, and your presence is power. Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, stay you.